just introduce yourself and talk about your journey.
Yeah, cool. First of all, thanks for having me. My name's Idin. I am currently a trainee at CMS, currently literally at CMS as well. I studied, my journey, I'll start from uni. I started studying economics at Nottingham, and then I changed to law during the course. Did law at uni at Nottingham, as I said, and then after that, spent a couple of years working, did some paralegal work, did some non-law work. Then I took the New York bar in 2017. That's another like chapter in the law story. And then started just doing applications. I was doing applications the whole time as well, just not successful ones. And then after a year or two after graduating, I got a couple of VAC schemes, and then accepted a training contract at CMS, which is where I am now. I sat in finance, in the finance department in financial services.
Brilliant. Thanks, Idin. Simran, would you like to have a go?
Yeah, so my name is Simran. I studied at the University of Bristol. I did a law degree. I hate to be that person who says, oh, I always wanted to study law, but I did always want to study law. But I guess I don't really have an idea about what the role of a solicitor actually, like what it involved or the competition that was involved. So while I was at university, I actually didn't enjoy my law degree as much as I thought I would have. So I explored other options. I did a tax internship at EY. I explored other non-legal options, which actually I think was one of the best things I did, because my non-legal experiences then helped me in gaining a vacation scheme at PwC, so another Big Four firm. And that was when I graduated from the University of Bristol. So I had that vacation scheme at hand. However, when I did that vacation scheme, I was very unserious. I was very complacent. I didn't have the qualities of a trainee then when I look back at it in the day. Wait, who looks like Beyonce? I look like Beyonce. What? I just saw the chat.
Maybe it might have been me.
And what happened? So I did my vacation scheme. I wasn't really the most serious candidate. And I didn't get the training contract at the end of it. It was really difficult, obviously, doing a vacation scheme, being at the last stage and then watching it slip away at the last point. So having to kind of rebuild myself from that, I took a year like I did paralegal work, which again really helped solidify that this was the right career for me. It also helped me to decide what kind of firms I wanted to apply for. In that time, I was applying to firms as well. And then kind of at the end of the year, I had about 2 vacation schemes and a couple of training contract offers as well. So that's how I picked my firm. I've recently done the LPC. Yeah, I'm starting my training contract in March 2021.
Brilliant. Thanks, Simran. That was and Idin. That was really interesting to hear about your journey. I think now we can start off with some of the questions that the Law Society Committee have prepared for the speakers. So I think we'll start off with the first question in the sort of area of applications and assessment centres. And it's about how to choose the right firm. So, being a student and when you're looking at the firms that are available to you, there are around hundreds of firms that you can choose from. So how do you approach that, and what are the factors you look into when selecting what firm is best for you? So Simran, would you like to start off?
So I kind of realized quite late when I was actually paralegaling what kind of firm was right for me. One of the ways I managed to find this out was while I was a paralegal, I was working in small teams. So there was a partner, there was an associate, and then there was me. So I really liked the fact that I was in that small team, and that led me to apply to firms that had a small trainee intake. And also for me personally, I didn't want to be known as the paralegal in real estate or the trainee in real estate. Everyone in the firm knew me by my name. They knew me on a first name basis. And that's what I wanted in my training contract as well, that kind of personalized experience. So that's why I deliberately applied to firms with a small trainee intake. So usually the firms that I went for had around a maximum of 6 per year, which is kind of quite small compared to on average what you usually get. And also I didn't want to kind of compromise on that international presence either. So I still went for firms that had that international presence as well. So that kind of led me towards US law firms because they have both the small trainee intake and the international presence. However, what I would really say is, especially while you're at university, to kind of help you find what firms are right for you is really about going to their networking events, their open days, insight days. I really regret that when I was at university, I didn't attend any open days or insight days. I was really intimidated by my cohort. I actually avoided law students on a daily basis because I was so intimidated by all of them. Everyone was doing so well. So that's why I didn't attend these events. And I think that's why when I graduated, I didn't really have an idea about what kind of firm I wanted to apply for. I was only applying for training contracts because everyone else was, essentially. So I'd really say to kind of find out what firm you want to go to. Looking at the website provides you a good kind of insight into what the firm wants you to see, but for you to actually find out it yourself, I think it's all about gaining that practical experience too.
Brilliant, thanks, Simran. Idin, would you like to add some points to that?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, Simran kind of hit on the main bits. I think being able to meet the people at the firms, get an understanding of them, is one way you can distinguish which firm you feel you would suit and fit in at. Aside from that, I just was jotting a few things down. I wrote location. Again, obviously, if you want to be in London or in a regional office, that will help you narrow down where you want to be. And you know, there's no lack of quality work outside of London as well. So you can still be doing international work just in the regions. Aside from that, structure, training contract structure, which is again what Sim was talking about in terms of whether it's a small intake, big intake. I think that's a huge factor, and that's quite a personal thing. Usually, just as a rule of thumb, the ones with big intakes would be more structured. The ones with small intakes would be more, you'd be, you know, kind of responsible for your own development a bit more. And that's just like, there's no right or wrong. It's what sort of person you are and how best you work. Aside from that, I also wrote people and strengths, practice area strengths. So people, I meant meeting people, kind of what Simran said, getting to go to the events, meet the people, see how you fit in. And practice area strength is just, it is what it is. If you're really interested in an area of law, like some niche area of law, like media law, and then you can find a boutique media firm, that's ideal. If you don't know, you can find more full service firms. When I was picking my firms, I didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do. I didn't really have any idea up until like a week ago, maybe, what I wanted to do for qualification and like throughout the TC. So for me, it made sense to go to a firm that has a lot of options where I can test different types of work.
Brilliant, thanks, Idin. There's some really interesting points there to take into consideration before you choose the right firm for you. Elias, would you like to ask the second question?
Yeah, definitely. So sort of moving on from that first question of how to choose the firm, once you have chosen and selected a firm that you are interested in, sort of, do you have any techniques that you used or still use to research a firm effectively, and then reproduce this research into your applications, sort of standing out in your applications through research? Do you have any tips, either of you, starting maybe with Idin?
So in terms of tips, the standard tips are kind of, especially now, like it's just going to mostly be online research, finding out about the firm, finding out what sets them apart, because it is super hard to figure out what sets one commercial law firm apart from 99 others. I think in terms of tips, I can give like practical tips that you can use. The whole point, or one of the biggest issues in grad recruitment reading your applications is the thing being too generic. So if it's too generic, you're probably not going to get the offer. So to make it more specific, I'd say one of the biggest ways is to speak to people. And when I say speak to people, I mean like get their name. If they tell you something about that firm, that's something that's not going to be on any website. And for example, you could easily put that into the application. When they say, why are you interested in this firm? You write what you're going to write, but in maybe a paragraph or two, you could say, when I spoke to Idin at CMS, he spoke about this sort of thing and that sort of thing that they do, and that appealed to me. So if you do stuff like that, that's like for sure gonna come across that you haven't done it generic. So in terms of one practical tip that you can do, aside from the stuff that I'm sure people would know, I think that's a good way of making sure it's tailored, because surely, like, necessarily if you're dropping people's names who work at the firm, that's not going to be something you can do at other firms. You can't be copy pasting that, so it will help you stand out in terms of research.
Brilliant, thanks guys.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so the next question I have is for Idin. So in your recent YouTube video, you sort of placed emphasis on the importance of applying early during the law firm application cycle. So for the viewers here today, could you tell us why it is important that you apply early to these law firms?
That's all top research from you guys. I'll take this opportunity to shout out Simran's YouTube channel and shout out my own YouTube channel. Yeah, so the importance of applying early. So check out the video if you haven't. It's about rolling applications, and basically how in short, I've made it like longed out in the video, but in short, it's basically if you're applying to a firm that's doing rolling applications, which most of them are, applying early is so in your favor, because you'll be basically playing for more available slots. And what you want to be doing is what you would be doing naturally is you might have a couple firms that you really love, a couple firms that you're just going to like apply to as like firms that you think are adequate. And what I'm trying to get people to do is not spend ages on the applications for the firms that they love, because what happens is you spend ages researching it. You want it to be perfect, every word to be perfect, having spoken to like 8 people and all this sort of stuff. And my point in that video, and generally, is sometimes it can benefit you just to get it in early. So trying to perfect the application is obviously good. However, if it comes at the expense of you getting it in early, it might have been better sending in like a 90% application 2 weeks earlier than like 100% application 2 weeks later.
I think ultimately, sorry, it comes down to time management as well. Well, when I started applying about, I would say around 3 weeks to a month before the deadline, that's when I started finding out that I was getting more and more successful. Of course, the quality of my applications improved as well. But I do definitely agree with Idin there in terms of getting your application in earlier. It does statistically help you as well, a lot more. And yeah, it just does help you out in that way.
Brilliant, yeah. So, if you are prepared, the point to take home is that, try and get that application in early, as long as you're confident with it. So I'm sure for those of you who aren't aware, law firms have opened their, most of the law firms have opened their applications. So it's time for us to start, getting those applications ready. Elias, would you like to ask the next question?
Yeah, sure. So obviously we just did a poll, seeing who, what stage of their people's degrees people are at, and 50% are first years. So I can imagine, when I was a first year, I didn't know when I was supposed to start thinking of applying to, I don't know, vacation schemes, training contracts, open days even. So I was just wondering if you guys had any information as to when you started to apply for your, vacation schemes and training contracts. Was it starting straight away in first year? Was it even after your degree?
So I started applying for
Simran,
vacation.
you can start.
Oh, sorry. I started applying for vacation schemes. I think in your first year you can't apply, but it's in your second year when you obviously start thinking about applying, and you can apply then. But obviously in your first year you can apply for kind of first year schemes at certain firms. And I did do vac scheme applications in my second year, but they weren't as great. I kind of underestimated how much detail I needed to put into them. And at that time also, I wasn't really as motivated to become a solicitor, because I wasn't really sure about, whether I wanted to go down that line. Like I said at the start, I was only doing them because everyone else was. So I think the main thing is, especially, with the first years that are here right now, I'd say really utilize your first year to kind of gain as much information as you can and get involved in as much as you can as well. So getting involved with your law society events, attending networking events, but also non-legal stuff as well. If you've got a hobby, an interest, or a sport. I know obviously with COVID it's a bit difficult right now, but hopefully in next term, perhaps when things start to open up a bit more, getting involved in that respect as well. It kind of builds you up to be quite a well-rounded individual. Leading back to the question in terms of when I started applying, I applied for my first vacation scheme properly when I was in my 3rd year of university. However, I don't really think there's kind of a right or a wrong time to apply for firms. I think apply when you feel like you're ready. And I think there's this massive rush at university, or when you graduate, you have to have a TC, you have to have a vacation scheme. And it's not like that in any way. The average age of a trainee solicitor, I think, is around 26 or 27 years old. So I always say this to my mentees as well. You know, you're not behind, you're not on time, you're not behind and you're not ahead. You're just right on time for like where you need to be right now. So don't put pressure on yourself and thinking, oh, everyone else is applying for vacation schemes, so I should as well. I think focus on your own journey and how you can improve yourself in that way.
Brilliant, thank you. Would you agree, Idin? Or?
Yeah, I think that last point is an important one. People are applying at uni. Bloody hell, I can remember at uni, literally anyone gets a TC and you're like, oh my God, I'm the only one who doesn't have one. But I can tell you now, I did applications from 2nd year all the way. 2nd year, 3rd year I did, and then immediately when I graduated I didn't, and then the year after that I did. So if I was at uni, that would be the 2nd year, 3rd year, 4th, 5th year of uni, if you're counting the years. And yeah, like the people who got in at 2nd year, who got the offers, obviously they're qualified, and that's awesome for them. But for me personally, having looked at my applications forms from between 2nd year and my final ones, I could see that I've improved a lot from the experience that I had between those times. And as well as that, so I think I'm faring much better in the training contract now than I would have straight out of uni. And as well as that, I'll just echo what Sim said about the average age. Like, I've started here, and there's people, like there's people who are career changers. There's a guy I know who's a teacher for a few years, and now doing a training contract. And these guys are wicked trainees. Like, got so much experience, and they really stand out. So having these other experiences can serve you well once you're in that training contract.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, some interesting points there, especially, you know, it's true how much pressure you have at university to sort of secure a job at a law firm, but it's all about going at your own pace and then securing a TC or wherever it is you end up working. Brilliant, thanks guys. So the next question is more focused on the assessment centre. So say, you know, you've got through the application form and you've been successful, they've invited you to, well, it's now the virtual assessment centres. So how do you prepare for the assessment centres, and what's the best way for you to sort of stand out? Because as you know, there are, on top of the sort of group exercises that you have, you know, negotiations and presentations, you have the interview, the Watson Glaser test. So it's a really hectic and really busy day. So how do you sort of prepare for that, and how do you stand out from the other candidates? Simran, would you like to start?
Yeah, so in terms of how I used to prepare for assessment centres, firstly, I think that this is what everyone usually does in terms of researching the firm, like top to bottom, go through the website, message people on LinkedIn to try and see if they have any insider tips or, you know, anything that they encountered when they were on the assessment centre. I took part in I looked at the Corporate Law Academy a lot when I was applying, because they had a lot of kind of insider tips there as well. I'm someone who learnt from practice. So the first 2 assessment centres that I did, I was rejected from, but then the next 2 after, I kind of learnt from the experience. And I think when it comes to the assessment centre, I think one thing that everyone should really adopt is a more positive mindset. I used to go into assessment centres and everyone else was so amazing and they had such amazing skills, whereas I just felt so inadequate, and that kind of translated in my performance as well, because in interviews or group tasks, I was so intimidated by everyone and focusing on what they were saying rather than on myself. So what I really kind of used to say to myself during assessment centres was, I have every right to be there just like everyone else, and that really helped me in terms of building my own confidence. I would say also at assessment centres, commercial awareness is something that is inherent throughout the assessment centre. I felt like you shouldn't really wait for a question to be like, tell us about a recent news story, for you to be like, let me display my commercial awareness here. It's something that you can incorporate into the group task, you can incorporate into a negotiation exercise. In my opinion, I try to talk about my legal knowledge or commercial knowledge wherever I could, because I wanted to give the best impression of myself. So I think in that way, it's about being proactive and basically trying to show off as much as you can about yourself. You've obviously, you've got something special in you that the firm has seen. So it's pretty much about just translating that to the firm now and making them like reassure that they made the right decision to bring you into that assessment center in the first place. So those are my kind of main tips, essentially, for assessment centers. But on my YouTube channel, I'm going to do a whole kind of assessment center series. So I'll go through every task and kind of my experiences on that. So of course, I'm going to plug my YouTube channel there. But yeah, that will be coming up in the future.
Brilliant, yeah. Well, I look forward to watching that YouTube video as well. Idin, are there any points you'd like to add to what Simran just said?
I think Simran covered most of it. One thing I'd add is that the assessment centers are as much a test of, not even a test, just as much as they're assessing the things on the sheet, they're also just seeing like what sort of person you are and how you interact with like everyone. So anyone from receptionist to the other candidates to the assessors as well. So bear that in mind as well. So it's just not a case of who knows the most law. It's also a case of who would I like to work with in a team. Especially I found in partner interviews in particular, they're not so keen to like stay on script and like tick the boxes that like they've been told to tick. They're more doing a much more of a like soft skills assessment of, is this a sort of guy that I'd be happy to work with on a late night or something like that. So in that sense, you've been practicing for assessment centers your whole life just by having conversations with people and stuff.
Great, yeah, some interesting points there. I'd just like to, on the topic of, law firms, we have created this poll, which I will now share with you. And this poll is just to sort of gauge the sort of interest from our audience members. So what is the most important factor for you when selecting a law firm? As you can see, there are 5 options there. So it'll be interesting to see what drives the audience members, why they want to work at a law firm and become a lawyer. I will give it a few seconds and then I will share the results. Almost all of you have voted. Just a few more seconds.
2 people for money.
If it wasn't a public vote, we'll see. Who goes up.
Yeah, and I'll just end polling now. And as you all can see, it's a tie between work-life balance and career progression. And only 2 people voted for money. Simran and Idin, how about you guys? What sort of drove you to sort of pursue a career in the legal industry?
Well, in terms of that poll, I selected firm culture and values. I think it was really important for me to be in a firm where I felt like I could fit in, especially coming from a diverse background as well. I felt like I didn't want to be a firm where I had to act like another person. So that was really important to me, and that's why I picked the firm that I did. But does that relate to the question?
Yeah, I know it does relate to the question. No, that was a really important point, especially with the firms always talk about the culture and values, and whenever I've been to an open day and when they talk about that, I always seem a bit confused as to why it is really important. But obviously, that was a really interesting point. Idin, how about you?
I didn't know we could vote, but I would have voted work-life balance probably. Just because I love working. However, I also like to do other things outside work. So I think it's important to be able to have that work-life balance, and just be able to do other projects or whatever. I'm always doing something, and that's something that I would rate quite highly. Although the money isn't bad either.
Yeah, great. So that was the polls, and on to the next question, which is about rejections. So as we all know, rejections are part of life, part of your law firm applications as well. So for our speakers here today, what was the biggest learning curve for you guys from the rejections that you have received? And how do you sort of bounce back from working so hard on an application and then being rejected from that particular law firm?
I mean, I talked about kind of my biggest rejection was from the vacation scheme. Obviously, like, you were so close yet so far. And I think I was bitter, and you're allowed to be bitter and you're allowed to be upset about rejections. I think that's perfectly normal. I think everyone kind of like is saying, oh, you shouldn't be upset about it. It's a redirection, which is, it's true, it is, but you know, it's also natural to feel upset about those things. And I was bitter about my rejection for like maybe 9 months or whatever. It was quite a long time. And I think how I kind of bounced back from it was I was thinking more about the long term. So this was the career that I wanted. I couldn't see myself like doing anything else. So if anything, I didn't really have much of a choice. I wanted to kind of pick myself up, and I had to pick myself back up. And if anything, I look back now and that rejection was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because since then I learned more about what kind of firm I wanted to go for. If anything, I'm at a firm now where I'll be starting and I feel like I'm a better fit for that firm. And I feel like even then as a person as well, I've developed so much, and even like kind of my YouTube channel, etc. I wouldn't have created all of that if I didn't have that rejection first. So I think, you know, when it comes to bouncing back, I think it's also about thinking about the bigger picture. I think rejections help with character building. I think they help with kind of personal development as well. It kind of humbles you a bit, which is a good thing. So I guess, you know, I guess that's why it's really important. And I think it is part and parcel of the process. I think it's also important to remember that every trainee has had at least one rejection. Every partner probably has had at least one rejection. So, you know, it is quite normalized, and it should be quite normalized in the legal kind of sphere, especially.
Yeah, some very interesting points there. Idin, would you like to talk a little bit about your rejections?
We'd be here all night if I talked about all my rejections. But I think, yeah, I had loads in short, literally from second year all the way till when I got the TC, I was getting rejections. Even the cycle when I got the training contract, I was getting rejections. The first one really, really annoyed me. I was really upset. Like, I thought I did it well. I was like so angry. I almost didn't want to get feedback when they were offering me feedback, because I was like, oh, I don't want to hear from them. But obviously take the feedback. That was a stupid thing to do. I did actually end up getting the feedback after, you know, sulking for a bit. But yeah, I think just to build on what Simran said, because Simran kind of said everything that I agree with everything she said, is just to be aware that it's completely normal to not be the best at something when you're starting it for the first time. Writing an application is completely different to writing a law school essay or the stuff you've been practicing. You're going to be tested on skills that you've never been tested before. Like, even in the assessment days, like, how many of us have been assessed on group work or like interviews? I'd never really done an interview before, the law firm interview. So just it's almost inevitable that your first time doing these things is not going to be your best. So just accepting that will hopefully help you reduce the pressure on yourself. And kind of paradoxically, the less pressure you put on yourself to perform, the better you end up performing.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you know, rejections are hard, but, you know, it's important to sort of keep your head up, and hopefully, you know, it'll open you, you'll be open to more opportunities and stuff. So yeah, Elias, would you like to ask the next question?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, I'm going to ask you a question that you're probably used to answering a lot of the time, but with seeing as like there's a pandemic and, you know, now there's fewer jobs available to applicants, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your former self with regards to applications? Like, with the knowledge of the pandemic now.
Simran, do you want to go first? I want to think.
Okay,
I don't have an answer.
I would say kind of believe in your source. I know that's such a kind of slogan, like catchphrase kind of thing, but I think when it comes to kind of applications and stuff, you really are selling yourself. And if you're not confident in yourself, you're not confident in your abilities or what makes you unique, then you'll kind of struggle in translating that confidence to firms as well. And this was something that I developed over time. It was halfway through my applications where it suddenly clicked with me that, you know, I should actually have to build confidence in myself in order to translate that to the people that I was working or like interviewing, people who were interviewing me. So I think that's the main bit of advice I'd give to myself, really, is kind of believe in yourself. And when you start believing in yourself, you start stepping out of your comfort zone. So in a pandemic, I would have the confidence to approach people on LinkedIn, asking maybe for informal work experiences, virtual work experiences. If you don't have confidence in yourself to do that, then you may struggle to actually take that first step. So I think that's what I would really recommend, especially in this kind of climate, is to really think about yourself rationally and think, you know, what is it about me that makes me like an attractive candidate or a suitable candidate? And then using that confidence that you've built within yourself, approaching and stepping out of your comfort zone, especially in this climate, and taking initiative will really help.
Brilliant. Some really interesting stuff there. Thank you. And Idin, do you have anything to add, or?
Not much. I think that was actually a really good answer. I think in terms of taking advantage of this kind of remote world we live in now, it's much more common for people to be, you know, connecting through LinkedIn or whatever. So do that as much as you can. Now everyone's becoming more adept in doing that. So I'd say remote networking and stuff like that is so useful when it comes to not just writing your application, even learning about firms and deciding where you don't want to apply. Just asking people about their experiences. People tend to be open to it.
Brilliant. Thank you guys for that.
Right. So so the next question is regarding, well, it's focused a little bit more on law firms and the different sectors that it has. So a common question, you know, students often are asked when they're at open days or, you know, even at law school is what sort of lawyer they want to become or what area of law they're really interested in. And as you can imagine, when you're just studying law, it's really hard to find an interest until, you know, you've sort of had an experience within that area. So, you know, what tips would you give students to sort of build their knowledge on various sectors that commercial law firms operate in? And what seats are you guys looking to, you know, are you looking forward to doing?
Idin, do you want to go first? I'll let you
go. Yeah, sure. For this, I think I never had any idea what I wanted to do. I honestly didn't. And as I said, literally up until a couple of weeks ago, I still kind of don't, to be honest. I'm still talking to trainees while I'm here in different departments, figuring out what they're doing, seeing if it's something that I would like to do. And to go into an interview and be like, I'm going to be this type of lawyer, it doesn't come across as completely believable, because like what as you said, Aditya, like what can you know without having done it? So I think having that awareness that you're not going to be held to your answer. I generally when I was asked that question would start with that, saying I'm giving an open mind. I want to try a lot of different things. I don't have one thing that I want to do necessarily. However, then you give some sort of defensible answers to something you're interested in. You're not going to be held to that. But as you said, having done the research in maybe the strength of that firm or areas that you're interested in that hopefully align with what they do, and then giving some sort of defensible answer as to why you want to do that, I think usually that's sufficient. Personally, I've never ever come down on like hard on this is what I want to do, that is what I want to do. Not because of any reason, like that's just because I was trying to give an honest answer. And if I was super into like media law and I was applying to a media law firm, I would also give the honest answer that I want to do media law for whatever reasons it was. But you won't be expected to, they're not holding you to, they're not like writing it down and like making sure that you have to do a seat in that department. But yeah, so to summarize this kind of like long answer I've given, it's not a crime to say, I don't know and I want to keep an open mind. Having said that, it's probably good to have some sort of reasoned, logical and fairly robust answers to the areas that you do want to apply to. And if they align with the strength of that firm, then all the better.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I still have no idea kind of what practice area I want to go into. For me, my first seat at Womble's isn't chosen for me yet. It's chosen for me, so I don't make that decision myself, which I'm quite happy about as well, because then I wouldn't be stuck with all these choices of practice areas where I don't even know kind of a specific one where I want to kind of go into or not. But what I would really recommend while you're at university is using certain kind of modules to kind of gain an idea about particular practices or areas of law. So I did this more in my final year because I think you get more module options. So I picked at the University of Bristol, they had an option to do corporate law simulation. So it was like this whole practical coursework based module where you act like you're acting for the buyers or the sellers in an M&A kind of transaction, which I found was pretty cool. And I think it's quite relevant to the corporate law departments that you get. So if there are any kind of practical modules that you have at Cardiff Uni, I would say, you know, if that's something that you're interested in, definitely get involved in that. But also extracurricular activities like negotiation competitions will really help gain an idea as well, because you're in certain tasks where you might be like talking about an M&A transaction, or you might be talking about something in real estate. So I think that's really useful while you're at university to kind of not really kind of put all your eggs in one basket, but explore the options and see what's out there. In terms of practice areas where, you know, ideally, like I might want to kind of practice in or have some kind of experience in is real estate and intellectual property. But the only reason why I say both of those is because I studied them for the LPC and I really enjoyed those modules. So yeah, and yeah, that's why I kind of want to like have a practice at them, but I'm not kind of like saying I have to do that. You kind of want to avoid just putting all your eggs in one basket, I'd say, but keeping an open mind. But also if you have some particular areas or interests, then definitely do, like Idin said, justify that with reasonable, like with reasons as well.
I would add as well on what Simran said, just emphasize one point that you did actually make, is that you're not necessarily going to get the seats that you have decided in your head. Hopefully for your third and fourth seat you will. However, the reality is that when it comes to your first and second seat, they'll prioritize giving the top choices to the third and fourth seaters, because those guys are like getting into the serious side of the training contract. So you'll most likely, I don't know if it's at all firms, but I think it's quite common that for your first seat, as Sim said, you might not even have a choice. And even if you do have a choice, you might not get your first, second, third or fourth choice. So whatever your answer is, whatever your desires are, keeping an open mind throughout the training contract is super important. Otherwise you're going to be disappointed.
Brilliant. Yeah, so it's important to keep an open mind and to not sort of limit yourself to just one or two sectors. Yeah, so some really important things to keep in mind. Elias, would you like to ask the last two questions that we are prepared for?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So these two are kind of specific for each of you. So I'll start with Idin. Obviously, that you mentioned that you passed the New York bar exam, which is obviously very unique and, you know, impressive. But do you have any sort of specific thing that motivated you to pass that exam?
Yeah, my failure to get a TC in the UK. But no, I'm joking. It was a calculated move at the time. I was planning on going to work in New York for a bunch of factors. One of which is I wasn't getting offers here, and then when I had the opportunity to do the New York bar, I took that to the exam, and the exam is quite like foreign student friendly in New York. If you've done a 3-year LLB on a campus, so like not remotely, although I'm sure like this sort of weird forced remote thing probably won't be an issue, but like if you've done a 3-year on-campus LLB, then you're eligible to take the New York bar. So in that sense, it was quite easy to do, which also motivated me. And yeah, ultimately, I thought it would be a good thing to have, with the plan to go and work in New York. Obviously, after having done that, I started doing applications here as well, and then got the TC here. So that's kind of on the back burner for now. But yeah, the motivations were work opportunities, and it's fairly open for LLB students to do it as well.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And finally, for Simran, you know, you've mentioned that you worked as a paralegal, and you know, at places such as Freeth, Stevens and Bolton, and Draper Lang. And you know, I for one haven't really been looking into paralegalism, as it's somewhat overshadowed, you know, by applications to vacation schemes and training contracts. But so could you give us any like information as to why you pursued the paralegal route, and how or why you would suggest it to someone who hasn't really considered that all before?
Sorry, that last bit cut out. It was why I went into becoming a paralegal, and what was
Yeah, and the second part was why and how would you suggest it to someone who hasn't entirely considered the paralegal route?
Cool. You did some really good research there, literally listing out all the firms. I was really impressed.
Just talking.
Yeah, so I basically, my first paralegal job, I was quite kind of fortunate at Freeds to do that. And I think this might be like interesting for like the people here as well. It was a program where if you work for the firm for like 6 to 9 months, they might offer you a TC afterwards. But because I moved to a new city, I did the job in Birmingham, and I'm from London. I don't have a Brummy accent anyway. So when I moved to Birmingham there to do the job, like I realized I actually preferred to go back to London because that's where my friends and family are at. So I didn't take that option. But I think that's kind of the main reason why I got into paralegaling in the first place. I was offered a 2-week role as an accountant before then, and I hated it so much. I really wanted to leave, and that job was the first one that I got, basically. But I would really recommend becoming a paralegal or any kind of legal professional job. And the reason why I say that, for me personally, it was because it really helped me in deciding what kind of firms I wanted to apply for. I was undertaking tasks that a trainee would. I was given a lot of responsibility. However, saying that, I'm quite cautious saying that, because you don't have to become a paralegal to get a TC. You know, you can do any kind of work experience, whether it be retail or I don't know, anything that might involve like customer work, for example, because law firms aren't asking for legal experience, they're asking for transferable skills. And I think that's the main takeaway from that. So anyone watching this thinking, oh my God, you know, I have to become a paralegal. And in this current market, it is difficult to become a paralegal. You know, the job market isn't as great, but I feel like people are putting unnecessary pressure on themselves to become one just for the sake of it. And I think, you know, you can do other roles in the meantime. And I would say, you know, for anyone who wants to become a paralegal after they graduated university, the way I got my recent paralegal job was I sent my CV off to a legal recruiter. It was a speculative application. I just said to them, well, if you have any vacancies in the future, please do let me know. And they forgot, I thought they forgot about me, but they got back to me in a month or so. So I'd say in this climate, you know, if you're graduating next year and you find yourself wanting to become a paralegal, then sending off applications and taking initiative in that way is the best way to go about it. Or even like forming connections on LinkedIn and building a rapport that way is the best way to go about it.
Great. Thank you very much. Interesting stuff. Should we move on to the other questions, Kevin?
Yeah, so we've had some questions submitted by some of the audience members before the event. First, would you like to start with the first one, Elias?
Yeah, let me just get that out. Yeah, okay. So for both of you, someone asks, what are your thoughts about the new SQE, so the solicitor qualifying exam, and whether this is better than the LPC?
My thoughts on the SQE, I think it's going to be a more accessible way of, you know, the whole training contract system isn't going to be in place. Essentially, I think the accessibility part comes from the fact that it allows things like pro bono, for example, to count as qualifying work experience, which I think is pretty cool. I think the word better, in terms of if it's better than the LPC, better can be kind of defined in lots of ways. Apparently, I think the SQE will be cheaper than the LPC. And I know I did the LPC and it was around 16K in London or whatever, so pretty expensive. And I think the SQE will be significantly cheaper than that. I think also there's both sides to the argument, really. I think with the SQE, everyone fears change. Everyone fears that, you know, this is a completely different system that isn't quite what we're used to. But I personally, just from my personal experience, I think in the long term, it will be quite a good thing in terms of just making the legal profession a lot more accessible. But I think the SRA and the people involved in like bringing it in, they need to kind of provide more clarity or just more information, because ultimately it will be people like students like yourselves who may be considering to do it.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything to add, Idin?
I don't know the ins and outs of SQ, but I do know that there's a lot more competition in terms of SQ providers, and I think, as Simran said, if it's cheaper, that would be my one big benefit for me, as in that I would say that it would probably be superior, because I know the difficulties of trying to get into law if you're not got like a firm backing you, and to do an LPC without the promise of a TC at the end is a huge undertaking. So to increase the accessibility of law, the biggest way I think is to reduce the cost of that period between uni and the TC, whatever the qualification is called, LPC or SQ.
Okay, thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah, there's some interesting debate there about the SQE. For those of you, there are a lot of first years in this chat. So for those of you who are unaware of what the SQE is, it's basically a new sort of super exam that they're introducing instead of the LPC, which you would do after your law degree. So yeah, moving on to the second question that was submitted by one of the audience members. The question was, a common question firms ask candidates is how they can add value to the firm. How does one tackle this question and what points do they raise? So Simran, would you like to start?
Yeah, I think in terms of adding value, I think it's a personal subjective thing. I mean, I can't really say, oh, add this or add that. I think it's kind of relating what I said before about finding something that is unique about you or something that you feel people or firms would find attractive about you. So if I was answering that question, I would talk about my resilience and determination. And then I'll talk about some personal experiences that really showcase how I display that quality. But of course, the answer is different for everyone. I think if you're really struggling to find something within yourself, maybe looking at what the firm looks for and then seeing if there's any examples of how you match that. So then, you know, one of the values or how you can add value to the firm is the fact that you actually fit in with the values of the firm, and then you can like showcase that. That's one way you could go about it. Or, you know, showcasing it in terms of like a USP point and really honing in on what you think makes you an attractive candidate.
Brilliant. Yeah, Idin, would you like to add some points to that?
I think, yeah, just emphasize what Simran said about your unique selling point. And again, being aware of how it comes across if you're going to overstate your value as well. So if you're coming into a law firm interview and say like, oh, I'm going to change the firm, like I'm doing this and that, obviously it's not going to come across as authentic. But the one thing that you can say that they won't have is the unique qualities of you. So focusing on that is probably the best bet.
Brilliant. Yeah. So yeah, Elias, would you like to take the third question?
Yeah, so we've got a question here asking whether or not you would suggest that we mention our attendance to career sessions such as this one within our applications, and if so, would you how would you recommend we effectively incorporate this?
I'm not sure whether I mentioned attendance of like kind of university legal society events. I kind of more mentioned kind of if I did attend any open days or insight days, I would mention that. Or I know obviously in this virtual climate with the Bright Network, I would, if I was applying, I would mention that in my applications because it's something that you learn from. I think ultimately, if you feel like you've learned something from this talk, and you know, say if you wanted to apply to Womble Bond Dickinson, for example, and you say, oh, one of the reasons why I'm attracted to this firm was because I attended this career series talk at Cardiff where Simran mentioned this, then I feel like that's suitable. I guess it depends on the question asked, and yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a very good point actually. And Idin, do you have anything to add?
I think again, is what Simran said is I don't think I would mention just general talks I went to. However, if it's firm specific, then you can really use it in that application to that firm to tailor your application, as I was saying before. And again, as Sim said, if you're applying to Womble Bond Dickinson or CMS, saying that I didn't said this or Simran said that, it will help make your application move from generic to more tailored.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, so we now have a few questions in the chat box, and one of the members have asked what journals or websites did the panelists find most useful for keeping themselves up to date with latest news and changes in advance of applications and interviews. So I guess it's more about what journals and websites and sort of podcasts you listen to and what how to look at daily to keep up to date with everything happening in the commercial world. Idin, would you like to have a go?
Yeah, another opportunity to plug another thing I do. I run a website called Little Law. I started that back in uni. It stemmed from, to be honest, that's honestly what I did mostly to keep up to date with what's going on in the world. So for those of you who don't know, Little Law is just a website. It's run by law students, started by me when I was at uni, just trying to create summaries of news stories and focus on the legal angle. And the reason I started that is because my commercial awareness was crap, and I was just trying to think of a way to force myself to improve it. So how I started to work on my commercial awareness was by writing these article summaries. So whenever I'd read a news article or watch something on TV, I'd write a short summary of it, and those summaries eventually became like shared amongst my friends, and then shared in the Nottingham Law Society, and then kind of like snowballed into the website that it is. So yeah, check out Little Law.
Little Law actually helped me when I was on my applications as well. That's what I use. Little Law. I use the BBC like the business section on BBC. LinkedIn is also quite helpful. They have daily rundown, so they give you a notification every like morning around 9 a.m. of like the day's news, which I found pretty cool. And also on LinkedIn they provide opinions of other people, so you're kind of having conflicting arguments sometimes, which is pretty cool to read. Nowadays I think there's a lot more kind of commercial awareness sites, which I wish I had when I was applying. Things like Watson's Daily, Law Miracle is one which I find pretty cool. And in terms of like podcasts as well, podcasts weren't really a thing when I was applying. I feel so old saying that, but I think like podcasts like the Financial Times one, and there's another one called Wake Up to Money. I think that's pretty cool. But that's what I'd recommend in terms of journals and sources. Also Investopedia as well, I think is pretty cool in terms of just familiarizing yourself with certain firms, like, not firms, but certain terminology when you're reading articles. For example, things like, I don't know, share sale, asset sale, warranty, indemnities, like those kind of key terms that sometimes you are expected to know in interviews. I think using Investopedia would really help in terms of just familiarizing yourself with those terms early on.
Brilliant. Yeah, so there are a number of resources available. So yeah, check out LinkedIn, Little Law, BBC, tons of podcasts. And yeah, they'll all help you keep up to date. And I think we have time for one last question, which was asked by one of the audience members, who I think wants to get onto the CMS First Step scheme. She asked, you know, for some applications, you have to write a short essay on a question. For example, the CMS First Step scheme, you have to answer a question on what is the relationship between law and business. How do you recommend we prepare answers for questions like these, and how can we make our answers stand out?
I've been messaged about this one question. I'm going to tell them to change this question next year, because I've got so many messages about this one question, and I have no idea how to. You know what it is? I don't think there is a right way to answer this question. I've like every time someone's asked me, I've had like 3 or 4 LinkedIn messages, a few Instagram messages from people just saying how would you answer this question, and each time I just have a conversation with them about what their thoughts are, and everyone is doing a completely different thing. And every time I hear someone's thoughts on this, I go, yeah, that sounds like a good strategy. So in terms of the law and business, relationship between law and business, I've seen some people talking about you know, how the business of law is changing. I've seen some people talking about like the law firms as a business. I've seen some people answering their firms, their answers to this question focused on the lawyers and the skills they need and like upping their business skills. So if tomorrow, if you're doing this question, there's so many different approaches, and I think that's kind of the point. I think they've just made this kind of ambiguous question to see whether you can make some sort of sense and some sort of structured answer out of a fairly open question. So yeah, sorry, that's such a useless answer, but hopefully I want to like empower you to whatever you're thinking. Like that probably is a good strategy, as long as it's structured and well written and everything.
Yeah, I guess there are different ways you can approach questions like that, and it's all up to, you know, extensive research, which, you know, even I have to do for my applications coming up. I mean, yeah, that brings us to the end of our session here today. I hope you all enjoyed it. Again, you know, you can check out Idin and Simran on their LinkedIn pages, their Instagram pages. They have Sims Legal Mentoring and Little Law. You can also check out their YouTube channels. Thanks, Simran and Idin, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have you again next year, maybe.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.
No worries. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this session, and we'll be hosting more like these throughout the academic year. So just make sure you get your memberships, as we'll be opening those events just for LawSoc members. So yeah, thank you all. I hope you all stay safe and enjoy the rest of your year. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.